Art. I'm Aaron Jack. Welcome. We're going to have Elisa Insua on here. We're going to be down in Buenos Aires today, an amazing artist. So I'm really excited to share this with all of you here, now, later, as we go forth into the world. So here we go. Here we go. In a second here. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Hey,
Hello,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How has this moment in history been for you?
Well, strange, as probably it was for everyone else. But I think I managed to try to get something out of it. It was a nice. I had been living in Spain for the last 2.5 years, and then I spent this whole pandemic year in Argentina, back in Argentina, which was obviously nice. And the slowing down of everything, I used it to like read and investigate, and I was very lucky. After seven months of confinement here in Argentina, I was lucky to go to my studio anyways because it's quite close. So I've kept on producing my work and going to the studio. So that was relatively nice. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So how did you make that shift back from Spain to Argentina? Did you open up a new studio, or were you just there for a little while?
Well, my idea was to come to Argentina for 4 months, and then this thing happened. The world was canceled, so I was already here in Argentina because I had come for this big exhibition I had in the last year in November and December. So yes, I decided to stay here, and when I got here in September last year, I rented a studio here in Buenos Aires, in the middle of the city. It's a very large warehouse shared with like 30 other artists, so it's really inspiring and really cool. So actually, to be back here wasn't bad at all. Like when I was in Spain, I enjoyed myself very much, but a part of me did miss Argentina, so it was nice. It was nice to be back here.
Wow. So you moved back for the exhibition, opened up the new studio. How did you end up getting all of your stuff? Because I just imagine that's a whole thing when you're going internationally to like, or are you moving your
Um,
paintings, or what's going on there?
Well, I did ship some work from Spain to Argentina for this exhibition. So we shipped most of the pieces that I had in Spain, and then some of the pieces that I had back in Spain, I left in a gallery called Cercone Projects. So I have some pieces there. And then my studio in Spain, I just lifted it up. I left it. And I left some of my materials in a storage space. So I still have things when I go there so I can quickly set up and start working again. And then here in Argentina, yes, I just shipped some of my pieces, and then I did have some materials here. I didn't have a studio, but when I had left, I had left a lot of boxes with discarded materials in a warehouse. So I went back. It's like a 300 kilometers outside of Buenos Aires. So I went back, picked all that up. So I had material to start working right when I got back. So that was good.
Wow. So that's kind of like how you go back and forth in the world. Like you're leaving stuff in like warehouses, storage units, and then you're coming back and like,
Yeah, setting it up again. It's a bit of a hard thing to do, a bit headache, but it works. And it's
uh,
nice to be able to move around, especially you probably know that also, being an
oh, I
artist.
do. I do. That's why I'm like, wow, you seem to be doing well with this aspect of moving around and having
Yeah, and
multiple setups.
yeah, I think it's necessary, right? For like inspiration and like it's like readaptation and being in a new space with a new public, in a new place, in a new city, in a new continent, whatever. I think it's inspiring and necessary. So.
Oh, that's amazing. So how has the readaptation affected you and your work?
Um, it's hard to say because I had been thinking of new ideas that I wanted to try. Like I've been working with discarded materials. For the people that maybe don't know my work yet. I've been working with discarded materials for the last 15 years with donations that people bring to my studio. Just like household discarded things like shampoo containers or bottle caps or makeup containers or something, things like that. And when I moved to Madrid, I started working with metallic objects, which was interesting because I didn't have that many people I knew to source all the plastic objects, but I did find a junkyard very near my studio, like 2 blocks away, where they gathered a lot of metallic objects for them to be like sorted and then melted down to be recycled. So there I found tons of metallic objects, and it was interesting to see how my work changed in a different place. But then when I came back home, I didn't want my work to be exactly what it used to be. So I started investigating different themes and investigating more about like science, electricity. Now I'm sort of into chemistry and studying things related to that and seeing how my work changes. And also what happened this year, which was sort of new for me, was that I started painting. And the first month of quarantine, I was locked in my house like everyone else. Then the rebel Elisa started going to the studio, but the first month was nice. And I stayed at home. And I started painting. I bought some like small canvases and I was painting like literally in the kitchen. But it was nice because I hadn't painted, like I've never been a painter. I've only done some paintings in a residency I did in the US, the Vermont Studio Center residency I did in 2016. And I had only painted then. And picking that up again was really interesting, I think. And I reconnected to that. And now I've kept on painting after that. So that has been something new. I don't know if it has to do with moving back to Argentina, but it was definitely something new I'm sort of investigating.
Wow. So it sounds like you go on these sprints of research and investigation. Could you explain a little bit of that process and how you learn to go about that process? And then what is that process for you?
Well, it's not like always the same, but I'm usually always trying to do research. Sometimes it's just like talking to a friend over coffee and something that he or she says like pops into your mind. And I think the most important thing about the creative process is the workshop notebook where I write everything down. Like that idea that my friend said and that film I was watching and then this talk I saw about, I don't know, Greek philosophy or whatever. And just like all those things that catch your attention, I just write them down. And then when I have the idea of a piece, I do a little like mock-up, like a sketch in these notebooks that I have. And I think that's the most important part. Then if some theme I'm interested in, maybe, I don't know, I have no idea if it will influence my work or if it will become like a piece of art. Maybe it's just like something I'm interested in and I'm like surfing the internet for hours, looking to like reading Wikipedia articles or asking friends. Now I've been asking, for example, engineer friends. I was talking yesterday about this chemistry thing with a friend who's a chemical engineer, asking like stupid questions like, if an atom, you know, the structure of an atom is like a very small nucleus with protons and neutrons, and then it's like empty space and then electrons. And this is like, I was asking him, if this atomic model is correct, like matter is almost empty, because if an atom is mostly empty space, like everything is empty. Like we are almost like virtually empty space. So I'm asking these silly questions, which sometimes they're like, I don't know how to answer that. Or I was asking him, for example, in the periodic table, you know, we have 118 elements, and I was asking, why is it 118 and more? Like, is there a theoretical limit to that? Or because the last elements of the periodic table were made by humans, like manufactured in a lab. So I was asking him, like, couldn't we keep on making different elements, and that kind of thing, like, or talking to my friend's husband, who's an electronics engineer, asking him a lot about like electricity, or how the electronic like circuit boards, how they work, which is the function of each part, and what's the beauty of it, that kind of stuff. That's part of my investigation. And then I write these things down, and then I don't know, the ideas start coming together, and then I have to choose which of the works or the sketches from this workbook I'm gonna bring to life. And I usually bring to life like 5% of the ideas that I have drafted. But it's fun. It's a fun process. And then when I just would decide, okay, I'm gonna do this piece, or maybe if it's for an exhibition, I say, okay, I'm gonna do this group of pieces. Maybe I work with a curator to like finish up the idea, and then when I have to start working, I have to first like gather up the materials, decide the sizes, do a lot of like material selection, or if I need a certain kind of material, for example, discarded candy, or like expired candy, or discarded jewelry, I started like make phone calls and see where I can find these materials and bring them over to the studio. So that's basically it.
So it's like there's somewhere between your notebook and the finding the place that it exists in the world, like the context of where it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
And how did you find this with your painting? Because your painting, it doesn't necessarily have a place that it's going to go in the world. You're just doing it, it seems like.
Yeah, I think it's a bit more relaxing because I don't depend on these materials that I have to assemble into something new. And like technically it's a lot easier because I don't have to be worrying about how I'm going to glue this, which is the perfect glue for these two materials, and how it's going to last and how it's going to be preserved. Like painting is more like straightforward and easier. And I have just, maybe I don't even have a real sketch. I have the idea in my head, and a very small drawing of what I want to do, and then I start working, and it's a different process, and it's also a lot faster because when I work on these collages, it probably takes me a month or a month and a half for each piece, whereas on these paintings it's 5 days. Maybe I complete a large painting. I work many hours in the studio, so that explains a lot.
Wow. So how does that feel, like finishing it so quickly comparatively?
Well, it's strange. I don't know. It's strange. It's nice on the one hand, but also I get a lot. I don't know the English word for this. Is it cloying when you ate too many sweets and you're like disgusted? It happens to me when I paint, that I look at the image so much. Like it happened with the last piece that I just finished last week, that I'm too many hours looking at the same image that I get like dizzy or like exhausted. I get to a point where I don't see anymore. It's strange.
So it kind of changes your perception when you switch the mediums to like speed.
Yeah, it does. And I also work with, when I paint, I work with acrylic, which is also very fast. So you have to be like, it dries so fast that you have to be like super quick, and there's no room for mistakes. Well, you can always cover up, but it's like you have to keep on going.
Wow. That's pretty intense. Let's check out some of your work here. So we've got some of your work to look through. Just tell me what's going on.
I didn't know how to do this to share. That's great.
What's happening?
What's this about?
Yeah. What are we looking at? Yeah. What's going on?
This is a piece I made in 2017, I think. So it's 3 years ago. It's a very large piece. It's 2.5 by 2 meters. I don't know in inches, but it's quite big. and it's obviously a barcode. It resembles a barcode, and it's all composed of these discarded materials. I don't know if you can zoom in to show
I
what are
can't.
oh, okay.
Yeah. These
If
are beyond Instagram's capabilities.
yeah, well, don't worry. Then they can go to my website or my Instagram and then zoom in, and you can see it's all composed of different discarded materials that I've stuck into that to assemble this image. There are, I don't know, iPods, nerd little boxes, like candy boxes, different plastic toys. There's a lot of different kinds of things. And the idea is, like, before dedicating myself to art, I studied economics and business. So most of my pieces have to do with like economic theory and what the economic system that we have, what it says about us as a society, and also like the downsides of this late capitalism stage. Like, you know, how capitalism brought a lot of great things into the world and progress and medicine and blah, blah, blah. But then all these downsides that we're just now starting to see. My work tries to point at those things and try to make the public reflect on how we can create a more human or a more responsible form of capitalism. That's one of the things that I like to convey through my work. And then there's the more ecological or environmental reading to it, as in like the amount of things that we dispose of and the amount of plastic that surrounds that we throw away on our daily lives, and how we should try to think of more biodegradable or sustainable kinds of packaging, or start to think more about what we buy and how that impacts the environment or the people who make it, or if we really need, when we buy something, do we really need it? How are we gonna dispose of it, and that kind of stuff. And then there's also this more the reading related more to like memory and our relationship to objects, like how as a species we have moved from having very few objects, like possessions, like a little, maybe a cooking pot and a bow and arrow, and that's it. And now there's so many different artifacts that affect our daily lives, and how we can, like, what's our relationship with them, our affectionate relationship with them. I think that's also interesting, and I like people also to make their own interpretations. These are the things I think when I create these kinds of work, but then maybe people come with their own interpretations, and I think that's great also. I would love to hear that.
Wow. So how did you, what is this barcode specifically? Is it like a specific thing, or do you just make it up, or what's going on?
Not really. It's like an arbitrary imagined barcode. I wish I could have, like, I don't know if I could transform this into a readable barcode that you can scan and it takes you to a website or someplace hidden in the internet. I think it would be great. I also made this year a QR code that is actually now in San Francisco. I shipped it in June, I think. It's a very large, it's similar to this one, but it's a QR code. And I also got this question like, hey, can we scan it? And I'm like, I should have thought of that later, because I think you can on some website just like get a QR code, generate it, and then have it and create the work resembling that image. I don't know if that phone would read it, if it's not black and white.
These are good questions.
Yeah.
These are good
Maybe
questions.
I should try first on Photoshop and try scanning it before moving on to doing it.
Yeah. Did you know that the last number of the barcode is calculated based on all the previous numbers?
Not really, no.
Yeah. I my one friend, he's actually doing an educational website right now, and like he does like interactive things, and one of the things he was just working on this last week was barcodes. And so I learned a whole lot about barcodes. Like they're like, such as like the numbers, you might read like zeros on the left side, but they're different zeros as they would be on the right side, because that way the scanner knows if it's up or if it's which way is which.
Right. Wow.
I know.
That's crazy. I love these nerdy geek stuff.
So I don't know. I just like we got into like how do I what is the what are the educational aspects and how to convey the information of how to read a barcode and how to understand how these like numbers like equate to like understand the last number in the code.
Wow. Yeah. And now it makes me want to investigate more about the QR code, because it also has like these three, like in the same position, these three squares. And then I saw that in all the barcodes, you know, in the middle you have this like sprinkled squares of black and white, but then there's a certain point where you have a square, and there's also the square, like you always see it. So I'm gonna have to ask or just Google it and see what it's about.
there's like always something more. I think that's interesting, and the I like the kind of economic thing that you're saying. Do you feel like there's something between, like, what's the relationship between the barcode and the elements that you're using there that are kind of like physically making up this image? Or this
well, I think it's pretty straightforward. The relationship with between it's all things that are sold and that are made like absolutely like massively. Like barcodes are not only to sell things, but it's to sell things that are done absolutely massively, because you're not going to put a barcode on a like a craft handmade pot or whatever. And it says a lot about our economic system. I don't know when they started, like when they appeared, the barcodes, but I know, for example, the QR codes started in the Toyota factory in Japan. It was their sort of like their way of tagging different batches of cars and like organizing the factory or whatever. And they from that they realized the many applications that it had in daily lives, from like to buy things or to track down where a certain products come from, or for a plane ticket or whatever. So I saw like the QR code, I see it more as a fingerprint, because it has a lot of information about what's behind that. But the barcode is a bit more commercial oriented, because it doesn't have it's not used for plane tickets or whatever. It's just like selling a lot, and selling things that are made like massively. And it's also I think it's somewhat related to like things that don't last a lot, because I think if you buy like artwork or a very I don't know, special piece of clothing, it's not going to have a barcode. So it's maybe it represents all the things that are used and then thrown out, and in this loop that is not closed. Actually, it's just a line where things are produced, sold, and then dumped. So the idea is to make us think more about these things, I think.
Interesting. Like this whole cradle to cradle versus like just like in the dump.
Yeah. Yeah, sadly. This one is a newer version of the same work. It's part of the same series. I did a couple of those. And this one with the little rainbow in it, it had to do, you know how the rainbow has in the end of it, I don't know how to call it in English, el caldero de oro, the golden.
Yeah, like a golden pot. Yeah,
yeah.
Pot of gold. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's this idea of, you know how advertising sells you things, making you think that, okay, once I have that, I'm going to be happy. Like once I have my new computer, I'm going to be a lot happier. Once I have this new dress, I'm going to be a lot happier. And we obviously know this is not true. So this is why I made this little rainbow, which is also an illusion, this illusion of, I don't know, satisfaction being over there someplace else, you know. I think satisfaction has to be like here and now. And this illusion of it being like happiness being always like far away, like you cannot touch a rainbow. Yeah, you can get close, but it's going to disappear or move further away. So that was the idea behind it.
Interesting. That satisfaction, the contentment is always ahead. The consumerism, it's always out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be applied to like consumerism, but it can also apply to like how maybe how we live or how we think of success or happiness or whatever.
Is that kind of like the way the barcode leads to nowhere? It's kind of like the rainbow, the pot of gold is nowhere, really.
Yeah.
Just to answer a question, I was just
yeah.
I was just trying to bring it home.
Yeah. Well, this one we cannot see it. Yeah, it's kind of cropped in, but if people want to see it in my website or on my Instagram, if you zoom it out a bit, it's a garbage bag, and it's all made with metallic objects, discarded metallic objects from the junkyard I was mentioning before. And it's mostly the same idea of publicity and how it sells us things that we think are super valuable, but we end up in the trash in the end. And this distortion of our notion with value, like what is value, what we value as a society, versus what has value, like as in economic value, like what has financial value, and how that idea of value can change. I think that's what this piece is referring to. But it can also be the other way around, like how the person, this one is in a woman's house here in Argentina who bought it, and she saw it the other way around, which was really interesting because she said, I think it resembles your work because it's garbage. It's like the material is literally garbage. It's metallic trash, and it was transformed into something valuable because you made it art. And now I paid for it and I have it in my house. So I think that was also really interesting. That's what I was referring when the public gives me a different message from what I was thinking. And I think that's really, really cool also.
Wow. So it sounds like you go into a lot of research to come up with it, but then the public has another point of view.
Yeah. Which is really, like, I think is really cool. It's like when the piece, you know how... I don't know, a child is born and then it becomes independent and it does its own life. I think when I create this works, like I have this idea of what I want them to say, but then they go to life, they're independent of me and they say whatever they want to say. And I think that's also cool.
That's so interesting. And then here you have a chance to say whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. And those two speeches probably complement themselves. So I think that's nice.
What's happening here? Because this is another trash bag, right?
Yeah, the image is almost the same. It's the same trash bag, and it's made out of expired candy. This one I also did it in Spain, and now it's locked up in like in epoxy resin, so they don't I don't know how to rot. And this one is the idea is similar. It's these things, like all the objects that we buy and how we're attracted to them. Like kids are attracted to candy, all that's like appealing, like the smell, the sweetness, the colors and everything. But then it's things that are maybe not good for us. And the idea with candy is, when I was in Spain, I was reading this book called Consumed by an author called Benjamin Barber. And it was giving us first, like, diagnosing the problems of late capitalism and then trying to propose different solutions as how we can cure capitalism, make it better. And I think it was really interesting. And when he was diagnosing the problems of capitalism, it said that the ethos that capitalism tried to put on or to create in its consumers was an infantilist ethos. That's what he called it, because he said that the markets try to infantilize the consumers to make them think like literally like kids, and always trying to make them, for example, give priority to images over words, or to choose the simple over the complex, or to choose like the short term over the long term. It was like the markets try to foster in the consumers this attitude like, I want this, I deserve this, and I don't care about anything. Like, and I thought that was quite interesting. So that's why I chose those expired candies. That when I was in Spain, I did a couple of works with these. I also did a very big installation that I don't know if I sent the image to you, but it's on my Instagram. It was a very big installation in a gallery, and it was a spider web made with wire, going from the roof to the floor and from wall to wall. And in that wire, you had like all the different kinds of candy and these like gummies. And it was sort of the same idea of this thing that it attracts you, but then it's a trap. But it's a self-imposed trap because we made it and we designed it, and we are the ones who are perpetuating this. So that was, yeah, the idea.
Interesting. So
here's my friend Marina. Hi, Marina.
Oh yeah. Say, answer questions as you want. We've got a lot of
waving. No, she was just waving. Let's move
on. So how would you propose would you propose to change that system, and what would you propose to change it to?
Well, I think the easiest thing to do is to try to get the public and the consumers to be a bit more conscious of what we buy, because I think the awakening is starting to happen, where we still have a long way to go, as in what I was saying of like try to think a bit more what we buy and what impact does it have, and how can it be more sustainable, and do I really need this, and these kinds of things. I'm obviously not against consumption overall, because I think it's not good or bad, or I think we just have to be a bit more responsible and like open our eyes and try to be, yes, more like curious about what we buy and what impacts it has. Then I think there's a lot for the governments and the public parties and public figures to do, as in the laws for sustainability and the laws for like, I don't know, the production processes and the waste jumped into the rivers and the single-use plastics. Like, I think all of this should be a lot more regulated than it is. And then for the governments to start doing that, I think one of the very powerful tools is consumer boycotts. Because, for example, suppose this brand sells, I don't know, sushi, and they do takeaway sushi, and it's in a plastic container. If the public, if their own buyers start do a boycott, and they say, until you don't change your packaging, we're not going to buy you anymore. If they want to if they want to survive, they're going to have to change the packaging. So like, if we like really commit to these consumer boycotts, it's really easy to change that. And we have a lot of different alternatives to make everything more sustainable or more reasonable. And for example, in Spain, when I was in Spain, I got a message from these group of people who were doing this No Plastic July, which I think was really cool. They were trying to commit for 1 month to never buy anything using discarded, using single-use plastic. So I think those are the things that I would suggest. And then there's this other thing that this author, Benjamin Barber, he suggested that I think is really cool, is that to do this kind of, well, it sort of exists, but it doesn't have real force. We would have to do it with real force. To have like a democracy of countries where, for example, we regulate what we can throw into the oceans or not. Because as the oceans belong to everyone, and they don't belong to a single country, everyone can throw things into the ocean and it's like no man's land. So if we could like make rules for that, and with this democracy to punish a certain country that for example, dumps things into the ocean, I think it would be a lot easier to enforce different global laws for sustainability.
So global laws for sustainability. How do you feel like the artist can have an impact on that?
I think, well, trying to spread the word. I don't really know, because sometimes I really get this question, like, if I really want an impact, should I keep on making art, or should I go to do a coastal cleanup and or go with a little sign and bang in front of the government? I never know what would be the most productive way to do this, but art comes naturally to me, and it's part of what I live for and what I do and what I'm interested in. So I think for me, it's what works, and if I can try to have a positive impact through my work, I will try to do it. But I never know to what extent it does have an impact, because maybe it does inspire someone who comes to a show and sees my work and comes back to their lives with a new idea on how to live, or how to deal with matter, or with material objects. But it's not something I can really measure. Like, I have gotten some messages from people saying, like, I went to one of your shows and it changed the way I think about my relationship to objects. But I don't know. It's hard to know for sure, like, what are the impacts of these things.
Interesting. So Vivian says, I wish there was a way to know if art really changes how people view the environment.
Yeah, I was reading that. I think that expresses what I feel. I share the same question, doubt. Ooh, this one. This one, I made it for this last year's show in Buenos Aires. It's a backlight. It's a relatively large piece. It's like 1.5 meters tall, and it's made of acrylic, laser cut acrylic, and it's assembled into this piece. And then it has a backlight, a LED backlight. And obviously it symbolizes this Gothic window, like a stained glass window. And in the middle, you can see this electronic circuit board that relates to this piece I made this year of the electronic circuit board, or motherboard. And the show I did was about all these things I'm talking about economy and ecology, but applied to like a virtual world. And virtuality and virtual fame and Instagram and all those our image in the internet, like, and it made me think about, like, this piece is about how important virtuality has come from us for us, and how sometimes our virtual identity can be even more important than our physical identity or real identity, and that's a bit creepy. It's like, this interviewer once told me a phrase that I thought was really smart, that he said, appearing successful has become more important than being successful. And this is obviously fostered by social media. So this is one of the things that I was trying to portray with this work. And there is also this other thing about, do you know dataism? This new idea of a possible new religion called dataism, where data is the maximum, like the supreme deity. And I think that was really interesting. I don't completely understand it, but I think it was interesting to be a part of the message into this piece. So it's one of the pieces that I have now in my studio. I really like it. I have it lit up when I work. It's super shiny.
How do you always feel about like selling a piece like that you put so much heart and soul into, that you're just like have like a conceptual framework all around this singular piece?
Well, I I think the artist has to let go, like, because when I sell a piece and I let it go, it's hard because there are a lot of things you cannot control anymore. You cannot control how it's hung or what the people are going to say about it in their house. Maybe a guest comes in and they're like going to be like, oh, this is about Britney Spears. And you absolutely lose control of your work. But I think it's necessary to let go of them because once a piece leaves my studio, it makes room to be able to create something else, and without maybe the taste of what I've already done. So it can be relatively liberating. And what I try to tell myself when I sell a piece is that I know who bought it, or if I don't, I can ask who bought it. So if I really miss it and I want to see it, I can just like ring their doorbell and go visit the work. And sometimes I ask for pieces for a show pieces that maybe I haven't seen in a couple of years. And when I see them, it's like, wow, maybe my conception of the work changes with time because I changed so much from one year to the next that it's nice to see them a couple of years ago and then like rediscovering them.
Wow. So you sometimes like ask for a piece that someone's already bought and put it back into a show.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because also I have like few pieces because it takes so long to create one single piece that it's not like I envy all those artists that they invite you to their studio and they have like paintings and paintings like things and drawers full of work. I have like a couple of like I've been working on this for a couple of years, so I have a body of work, but I don't have like I don't know thousands of paintings in a storage.
Oh.
Well, this one is one of my favorite things that I've done this year. It's one of the highlights of a lockdown or pandemic period. It's a piece that I've been wanting to do for a while. It's very big. Here we cannot see it completely, but it's like a polyptych. It's composed. There's another piece in at the top, so it's 4 different pieces connected with these chains. And if you zoom in, you're gonna see it's all made with jewelry. Different kinds of ornaments, actually, like earrings or necklaces or gold chains or all these different ornamentations. And I was doing a bit of research at the beginning of the year about this idea of ornament, and there was this book I read called, I think it was The Psychology of Garments or something like that. And it said that the first question that the book opened with was if people started dressing up for shame, like to cover up, or if it was because they needed to warm their bodies, or if it was just for a necessity of ornamentation. And of course, there's a combination of all of them. But what it said was that there are peoples or tribes that don't dress up, that they don't dress, but there is not one single human group that doesn't ornament themselves. And I think that was really interesting. So I started asking myself questions like, I don't know, why are human beings or mammals generally so less colorful than birds or fish that have these crazy, intense, different colors? Or does ornamentation or self-ornamentation, does it hide who you really are, or does it enhance who you really are? All these different questions. I started also in this book, I read about how self-ornamentation is now more associated to women, but actually throughout history, men ornamented themselves even more than women. And obviously in nature, the male is also more like the male peacock is the one who has the big tail, or the male lion is the one who has the big mane. And in fact, the makeup was first used by men. Wigs were first used by men. High heels were first used by men. And here in this piece, you can see you cannot zoom in enough, but there's an image. There's a little frame with an image of Louis 14th, the how do you say in English? The Rey Sol, the Sun King.
Okay. Yeah.
And he in this painting, he's wearing like tights and high heels and makeup and a wig and very like lush garments. And this book told about how like why men resigned to all this ornament, and it came down to the French Revolution with the new ideas of equality, well, especially equality, that before the French Revolution, people dressed according to their social status, and a rich person never wore the same as a peasant, or the other way around. But after this new idea of equality came about, everyone started dressing the same, but everyone in that age meant men. Like women didn't have ideas, they didn't count. So they kept on ornamenting themselves, and that's when the men resigned their ornamentation. I thought that was really interesting. So all these ideas come into this big puzzle that is this work that also has to do something like with something like tribal, carnavalesque. I'm really interested in the carnaval that we have here in the north of Argentina, and how it evolved from like the European carnival and how we readapted it to Latin American carnival. So it's like a soup made out of different ideas.
So Mika asks, I think your art shows that that we see as waste that what we see as waste can have value. Have you seen any interesting non-artistic I'm not sure how to say, just like of waste, like non-artistic uses of waste? Like what are ways that wouldn't be in an artistic form that would have waste? Like how could waste be reused?
Well, it doesn't have to do a bit with artistry, but like maybe customizing clothes, for example. Like if you like this pair of jeans, but you don't like this part, just cut it off and sew something else on it. Like I think there's many creative and non-creative ways to reuse things or recycle things. I've heard here in Argentina, there's people who gather plastic, sort of melt it down and create benches or these wood, like sort of these planks for the floor that resemble wood, and they look really, really great. So I think that's part of our challenge nowadays to like think of ways on how to reuse. Is that your question?
That was the question that was asked by Mika. So yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. I think there's many ways. I don't know. I was watching a film of Patagonia and how they started recycling fishing nets to make jackets. There's many different possibilities, and I think that's our challenge, to start thinking of how we can reuse what we have.
Cool. If anybody else out there could just tell me what time it is in the comments, that would be helpful. Thank you.
It's 4:52.
Okay,
so
cool.
We're almost done.
we'll go through some of these a little quicker then.
Yeah. This one, I don't know if people can tell, but it's the Snapchat or Instagram filter of the little dog. It's the 2 ears and the nose of the dog, and it's quite big. Here it seems small, but like for example, the nose is like 1 meter wide, so it's quite big. It's a triptych, and it's all made with these metallic objects from the Spanish junkyard. And it's going on with this idea of value and what we assign value to, and what's a real values as a society. And here it represents like how the stupid things on the internet, maybe they create a lot of value. And speaking specifically of like the digital content that we watch, that sometimes the internet bombards us with like, I don't know, someone's breakfast or things that are not maybe really interesting or valuable, but that they create a lot of economic wealth in these social media platforms, or for the companies that are behind the social media platforms. So it's that sort of idea. It's called The Cult of Banality, and there's a book I read with the same title that I stole, which I really recommend to read. This is the QR code that I was mentioning at the beginning of the talk. It's quite big. It's 160 centimeters by 160, or a meter and a half by a meter and a half. And yeah, I already explained this one, so you can maybe move on to the next. Oh, and this is also one of my favorite things that I've done this year. It's the electronic circuit board that I already mentioned. But all the black background that you see is all discarded technology parts. Like there's PlayStation controls, there's Sega Genesis controls, there's keyboards, there's mouses, and there's phones, a lot of Blackberries, a lot of iPhones, even VHS cassettes, calculators. And it was also trying to, although you know how the actual circuit is made with jewelry and sort of ostentatious materials, and then the rest of like black plastic. So it's sort of this idea of like data is the new gold, and the relationship with petrol, because all this plastic, like the plastic containers of this technology come from petrol. It has some things to do with that, and how these industries or technological industries are now the most important and valuable and wealth creating industries. So it was sort of about that. And this is one of the paintings that I was mentioning before also. I made it at the beginning of the quarantine, painting in my kitchen. And they're these pieces that resemble marble. I don't know if I sent you this one. This is I don't know how to call it in English. Is it a postnet? The thing to pass your card in a store.
Oh yeah.
How do you call that?
You can see it right there. So
yeah, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, we know what we're talking about. There's an image.
Yeah, and it's all sort of mimicking marble, so this being like super luxurious, and it also has to do with how these, how marble is made with pressure and heat, in the same way as petrol, or a similar way as petrol, or how do you call this? Well, yeah, it's sort of about that. Here we cannot see it, but the ticket is on flames, and it's called Capitalist Realism, inspired in this book also that I have here in my shelf.
Do you want to get it for us? You can take it off.
I don't know if I can find it. I'll see.
Okay, we'll see. Does anybody else want to tell me what time it is in the comments? That'd be cool. Also, if you're not following,
I think I have it upstairs. I think I have it upstairs, but yeah, it's by Mark Fisher, and it's called Capitalist Realism, and it's about how after the Berlin Wall fell, everyone decided that liberal democracy and capitalism are the only solutions or the only ways. Am I here?
Yeah, you're here.
Someone called me. That what was he saying? Oh, that this book it says that capitalist realism is this idea that after the Berlin Wall fell, everyone decided that democracy and capitalism are the only. They're not ideal. They're not perfect, but that they are the only ways in which society can organize itself efficiently. And what it's trying to say is that it's not, that we should keep on thinking of better ways to organize our society, that there have to be better ways, and that it's not that we arrived here and it was the only, like it's not fatalism, that it was going to happen anyway. You know, we could have ended anywhere and we ended up here. So that's what the book is about. It's really interesting. And it's what it inspired this painting and the rest of the paintings that I've done this year. They're all in the sort of the same group. This one here, we cannot see it. It's a fire extinguisher, also made in marble. And it's the same idea of like, it's more dramatic and a bit exaggerated, but like capitalism being in flames, or the world in flames, the world being in flames. This one is like a petrol dispenser, a gas dispenser, sort of retro, also made in marble. And it has the same idea of plastic, petrol, wealth, capitalist realism. It's all part of this same group. These are small. Those paintings are like,
these.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
That size, 50 by 70. This one is I made it a couple of years ago already. I think it was 2015, so it's 5 years old now. It's called Hedonic Treadmill, and it's based on this idea called, this theory called a hedonic treadmill, that it says that people are always moving forward. It's the same idea as the rainbow, that this idea that happiness or satisfaction is over there and not here. So we're always moving forward, but in the end, we're staying in the same place because our level of happiness remains in the same place. What this theory of the hedonic treadmill says is that despite major changes in fortune or great deeds or major achievements, your level of well-being will always remain to a relatively stable level, you know? Like you may achieve a certain goal or a prize or a recognition or a raise or whatever, and the joy it brings or the satisfaction it brings is very brief, and then you come to the same level. So it's this idea of that you're always moving forward but always staying in the same place ultimately.
Right. So what's it worth?
What do you mean?
Well, so like the moving forward, what is it worth if we're in the same phase?
Exactly. And what would happen if we stopped moving forward? Like, would that level of happiness remain the same? Like if we didn't keep on moving forward, or would it drop, you know?
Or would it go up?
Or would it go up? It could. Yeah. And this one is also one of my all-time favorites. It's a coffin. It's real size, so I could fit in there. And it's all ornamented with these metallic objects on the surface. And as most of my pieces, it has many readings to it. But basically, we're here in this life. Like life goes by so fast that accumulating doesn't make any sense. And also it has to do, you know, it has a sort of Egyptian vibe to it, and the idea was to make us think, you know how Egyptians, they saved ancient Egyptians, they brought with them all their belongings for the past lives, and it seems like people nowadays are living like that, like accumulating as if they were carrying everything to the next life, which is obviously not true. So that's basically it. And these are some experiments I made in 2016. I think it was, 2016. It's like a piece of cloth that I got it stiff with polyester resin and fiberglass. And then I covered it up with all these metallic objects. And it's also questioning this principle of the more the better, this economic principle on which economic theory is built, or capitalist theory is built upon, that it states that for any given individual, the more the better. And this piece is sort of trying to question that. To what extent is more better? Isn't better better instead of more better? This one is the one I was talking about previously. It's the spider web made with gummies, discarded, expired gummies. And this is another one that I made with expired candy. It was a big installation. It was these handcuffs, you say, that were on the floor. They were 3 meters long, so they were very big, and they were all sort of in this Hansel and Gretel style, with decorated with candy. That a friend of mine, his father has a wholesaler of candy, and they always have things that they're going to throw away because they're expired. So they brought out some boxes to my studio, and I made this. And it was this same idea of the infantilist ethos of capitalism, and how the things that attract us may, in fact, in the long run, enslave us or damage us in any way. It's the idea of Hansel and Gretel. Sometimes these stories sum it up perfectly. The trap.
The trap of it all.
Yeah.
And then here.
And that's me with this is nice because you can see the scale of the work.
Oh, because this is like the dog.
This is the dog, but here the background is like a holographic vinyl.
Wow. How are you hanging those on the wall? I'm just curious.
There was a very good I don't know how to say this in English. The people who hang the works.
Yeah.
There was a very good team for like the setup of the whole exhibition, and they did an amazing job. So I have no idea how they hung it. But it's not easy. They're not too heavy. It was just putting 2 different screws on each.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, I hear you have you have an exhibition coming up.
I have towards the end of the year, I'm going to be participating in 1 or 2 of the Miami fairs of December. So I'm going to let everyone know in my Instagram towards the end of the month. And I'm really excited because I'm going to be showing different things in different fairs. So it's going to be really nice. And then next year, I'm going to do a residency at this in New York, this organization called Materials for the Arts, that they've been around for, I don't know, 20, 30 years. And they have a very, very big warehouse in New York, actually in the north of Brooklyn, I think. And they gather all these discarded materials for different stores and brands and companies. And they give them to different creative groups to do different artistic projects with them. And they have amazing stuff. And they have a studio there and a little gallery. So I'm going to do next year, I think it's May, June, and July. I'm going to be the artist in residency there. And then I'm going to do an exhibition. So it's nice because it's going to be my first exhibition in the US, like my first solo exhibition at least, because this year I'm going to do the fair, but it's obviously group booths.
That's awesome. That's some big those are some big things coming up in the near future.
Yeah, a lot
right
of
here just beyond. Let's hope the numbers go down and all of that.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Do you, so first I want to say thank you all for watching, and please follow me, Aaron Jack Line Art. This is my 66th interview in the series. So since COVID started.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So please follow me every Tuesday. Generally, I'm here with 2 interviews, our discussions, conversations at Aaron Jack Line Art. So follow me up here, or conversation, or in the comments. And then Thursdays, I'm over at Freedom Tapestry Project, usually with a whole group of international artists. Even more international artists because this is international and stuff. But so thank you. And if you'd like to say any words of wisdom, where people can find you, and then some inspiration, that would be great.
Sorry, I was distracted
Oh,
waving at the
I
people
know.
and
There's
reading
so
the
many
comments.
people waving.
And
I love the waving.
yeah, I love the waiting, but I got distracted. I didn't hear your question. Your
Oh
last
no, it's okay. So first, where can people find you online?
Online, on Instagram at Elisa Insua, and then my website is www.elisainsua.com. So it's pretty easy. And if they just Google Elisa Insua, the website is going to come up easily. So yeah, that's it. And then I'm also represented by MT Art, which is an artist agency in London, but they represent I don't know the exact number. There is, I think, between 20 and 30 international artists. And I'm also on the website and I do projects with them. So you can see also work there.
Very cool. And do you have some words of wisdom or some inspiration that maybe you haven't shared that you'd like to inspire the people watching now and later with?
I feel more comfortable giving words of inspiration than of wisdom. I have no idea if I have any wisdom in me. But I would just inspire it, like try to encourage people to do things. Now I'm reading this book called Free Play. I don't know if you've heard of it. Probably you have. About improvisation in art and in life. And it talks about the importance of free play. And being like in that mood of not thinking about the results or if it's what you're doing is good, if it's bad, if it's worthy, if it's not worthy, just being like in the moment, creating or doing things. Because I think it really leads to valuable outcomes in the long run, that free play. Like when I was reading this book, I was thinking when I started out when I was 16, creating collages with objects that I didn't need anymore. And when I look at them, I'm horrified because I think they're really, really, really bad. But I had so much fun creating them, and they were the seed of what I'm doing now. It's not that I find it that I'm completely satisfied with my work, but I like it and I enjoy it and I live from it. So that's a lot already. So that's what I would say. I would just encourage people to give like free rein to their desire to play and improvise and create. And if you can create recycling, that would be amazing. Like reusing different materials that you find around you. But yeah, that would be it, to go for it. And then after, like Steve Jobs said in that famous speech, that you can connect the dots looking backwards. That afterwards, once you've played, you will look back and you will realize how it's helped you come to where you are. I think that's a really nice advice.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching, and make sure to follow us, Elisa Insua and Aaron Jack Leinart up here, and I'll see you next time.
See you. I'll be a part of the public then.
Perfect. All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.